Hello, buddy. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor. Today we're going to be looking at the ADC tier list for patch 13.4. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. Really helps out a ton on the channel. Be sure to check out the support tier list as well. I'll see if I can put that linked at the beginning in the upper right, or I guess be that way, of this video. So check that out if you want. And then we're streaming most nights starting around 9:30 or 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, usually going until about 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So just a couple hours of streaming. There might be a couple of nights where I can't make it just because my schedule is super busy these days. But I do like to come out, hang out with you guys, chat, play a couple of games of League. So come on out if you're interested in that. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So the ADC meta is in a process of transition right now. We had been in this meta of very heavy poke, push, lane dominance. And you are still seeing a good chunk of that. But with the return of various engaged champions that are really strong too in the support meta, then you're seeing a few more kind of all-in or early game champs that are able to shine too. So Rakan is obviously the biggest one. I talked about that in the support tier list video. He's always really good. He's always underestimated, but he's not as much underestimated as he used to be. He's a top, 7 pick now in popularity. And he has an extremely high win rate for Rakan because he's a very difficult champion to play. So typically if Rakan is at like 51 or 52%, then he's really, really strong in the meta. Most of his history, he's been between, 48 and 50%, even when he was dominating the pro scene, just because he is so hard to play. So the fact that he's at 54% means that there's just something really busted about this champion right now. And, a big part of what that is was they made his laning phase a lot easier with the Q. That it costs a lot less mana so you can spam it, and it gives you a pretty strong heal in the early game for yourself and for your ally. And, of course, you have your refillable shield on your passive as well. So he's just very, very resilient to a lot of these poke champions that people have been trying to use to bully the bottom lane. The Caitlyn, Lux, Karma, those types of champs are still okay, but it's just really hard to pressure him and his partner out of CS in the bot lane. And then he's always dominated in the mid and late game in team fights. It's just, can he get through the laning phase without the ADC going down 30 CS? So I'm mentioning all of that because that all plays into why Xayah is number 1 right now. If people are curious, well, what the heck, they didn't change anything about Xayah. Yeah, I mean, they really didn't, right? So if you look at 13.1B, she gets a little bit more mana regen. 13.1 flat, she gets a little bit more, a little bit better ratios. But it's really not that much. So it can look like, where the hell did Xayah come out of? Out of nowhere. Well, a big part of it is Rakan, as I mentioned. Another part of it is the change to itemization, where they made caster champions a lot stronger now, where it doesn't just have to be attack speed. So historically, Xayah, she has been really good in some other metas where you have to attack a lot, but when she's sort of at her strongest is where you can really leverage her as a caster, right? Where those feathers do a lot of damage, you can get a lot of feathers on the ground, and she has a lot of uptime on her abilities. And that's really where she's sort of at her strongest. And that just changed with the quick blades in particular being a lot stronger, but she can do Infinity Edge as well. I'm not sure what the higher win rate is. I think most people do quick blades, but pretty much what they ended up doing last patch was they changed the amount of crit that you have to activate either quick blades or Infinity Edge down to 40% from 60%. So that basically means you can skip the Zeal item, the Phantom Dancer, usually, and just go straight for something like Infinity Edge or quick blades, and you're going to have a much, much stronger power spike off of 2 items for these caster champions in particular. So we'll see that this happens with Xayah, to some extent with Jhin, Samira, and Ezreal, who are all tier 1 or tier 2 champions, all benefited very, very heavily from these changes because, the attack speed is okay. It's on curve a little bit easier. It's only 2,600 gold. But in this meta, a lot of times, you're just not going to have as much time to sit there and auto-attack. If you are hitting like a Sejuani or something, that's good. But you need to be able to burst out and kill some of these fighter champions before they start getting, Death's Dance activations and Triumph activations and healing from all the various healing that's still in the game. So you need to take care of them quickly. Like, you do not want to give Irelia time to go to work. You want her to evaporate, instantly, or Akali when she tries to go on you. So Xayah is very, very good at doing that with something like Quick Blades, because that allows her to just have more uptime on her feathers. And they are so powerful, and more uptime on her W, which gives her movement speed and higher attack speed. It's just really, really good on her. So that's why she's in the meta. That's why she's really strong right now. She's also historically very good against divers, and again, that's what you're seeing a lot in the meta right now with the Irelias, Akalis, just everything trying to dive the backline and kill them. She's good at dealing with those divers with her ult. Now, this is a little bit of a longer cooldown. They did lower it at some point. I think it used to be 160, but last year they took it down to 140, which is good. But being able to get these quick blades early on gives you an additional 20 ability haste. Now, the Transcendence does not affect your ultimate ability, but the fact that you can still get this, have high DPS uptime, and 20 ability haste is nice, because you can get... it's just really hard to get haste off of other items as an ADC. Unless you start to go down into lethality, and lethality is not as good on her historically. So this is just an item that fits extremely well sort of with her kit. And Gale Force is really good too. In particular, it's good on Xayah because it allows you to reposition and make sure that you can get the feathers, pulled in the direction that you want. But also because it allows you to dodge hooks from popular things like Blitzcrank or Nautilus hooks or Leona ultimates. It's just a really strong item in general, and very good at snowballing too. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear. I don't know what that random screeching is in the other room. There's like kids running around, just trying to see how much noise they can make. But anyways, incredibly powerful champion right now. Good in the laning phase, good push, good trading, good kill threat early, excellent team fighting later, great survivability. So just very, very good. And especially if you put her together with Rakan, that's like, probably the most dominant lane right now, and I don't even think it's that close. So yeah, I would expect them to probably get some kind of nerfs on the next patch. One of them, if not both of them. Okay. Next we hit Zeri, and this one is tough because she's way better in pro than she is in solo queue, where people can actually micro and make the most out of her range. But nevertheless, I just think she's one of the best, probably the best scaling hyper carry champion right now. And, her kit is very different. It's just very confusing from a lot of things. But she does extremely well with some of these new changes. And I don't remember if she does Quick Blades or Infinity Edge. I think it kind of just depends on what you need. If you want more mobility, then Quick Blades is going to be good. But if you just want more raw damage, then Infinity Edge is good. So usually you just want to go for Shield Bow. Just so that you have that protection. You can use your ult and ramp it up. And then start running around and zooming. Just as long as you don't get blown up early on by a diver, then you should be able to reposition, run around the fight, utilize your range. And she's one of the champions that's most likely to pentakill because she just gets so many extra bonuses and extensions on her ultimate. As long as you keep hitting people and you stay alive. And she's very safe. Not only does she have a dash that can get a decent little distance by itself, but obviously she can go through walls with it. She's got her ultimate for a little bit of burst damage. So she's just really good. She's weird. She takes a lot of practice, a lot of getting used to, so there will be a lot of bad people with her, but people who do have that skill cap will be able to fully leverage her. And again, she's just really good with that Infinity Edge or Navori Quick Blades as a second item, so you don't have to get something like Phantom Dancer or Hurricane. I think Hurricane is still pretty good on her. They did nerf that interaction somewhat, and it actually does have a higher win rate than Quick Blades, but Infinity Edge has a higher win rate than that. But I think a lot of this is just situational. I mean, Hurricane's going to help you out with wave clear. It's going to be really good in team fights. And if you're behind and you don't have enough money to get to 3,400 on time, then getting something for 2,600 can be good. And she is a really good user of Hurricane. Now, I would not recommend getting Phantom Dancer. Again, I'm not like a Zeri expert, but as you can see, it's a much, much lower win rate. And I think this item, by and large, is a trap. Like, the attack speed is cool. But really, the reason that you would want a Zeal item is for the Hurricane, and just because of the way that the Hurricane bolts work with your Q. That is a really powerful interaction in team fights. But again, especially if you want the mobility, if you think you're going to have to kite out a bunch of divers, then Quick Blaze can be really good. If you just want that raw, like, tear through the tank capacity, then Infinity Edge is probably going to be better. So, very good. Although, just like Xayah's pretty high skill cap, I think Zeri's probably even higher than that. So both of these are going to take some practice. You're probably going to lose some games while you try to play them. But they are really good champs overall. I think ADC in general is one of the highest skill caps, if not the highest skill cap role, just because your positioning matters so much most of the time. Okay, like with most ADCs, unless you're just absolutely turbo fed, you can't just like jump in there and roll your hand across the keyboard and kill them like you can with, 70% of the champions in League. Okay, Jhin. This might be surprising. I would not be shocked if other content creators put Jhin down in like tier 2 or something, but I still think he deserves tier 1 just because he's so versatile and he works with so many other champions. The big thing about Jhin is that W, right? It's, like a 2-second route once you get it leveled up. I think it might even be 2.25. So it's incredibly obnoxious, and it has a huge range. It's like 1,000 range or something on it. So it just combos together with so many different things. Any jungler with CC, any support with CC, just anything that CCs somebody, and you're within like 2 screen links, you can follow up with a 2-second route, and a lot of times that's enough, even if you can't get there fast enough to actually land auto attacks. Just being able to stick an extra 2-second route and chain it with virtually any piece of CC is going to be incredibly powerful. And then on top of that, obviously he has really good sort of wave clear early on with the grenades. They're very cheap. You can just spam them, push the wave if that's what you want to do. You have the 4th shot where you can back people off and make them miss CS early on, so he's got kind of that bully potential. And then he's one of the strongest single item power spike ADCs out there. Once you get that Gale Force, being able to Gale Force in with that 4th shot grenade is a lot of burst damage that catches people off guard. So Jhin, going to be a powerhouse right now. Works really well with the Infinity Edge change, that you can get Infinity Edge second instead of Rapid Fire. Collector is still a pretty good one as well. That's somewhat unique to Jhin, but he actually does like lethality. His abilities do quite a bit of damage with his W, with his grenade, with his ultimate. So lethality is not as much of a downgrade on him as it is some other champs. And he does have a pretty high win rate with the Collector, although Infinity Edge is better overall and has better scaling until later in the game. So Collector's just like, if you want to pick up something that's a little bit cheaper, like maybe Collector, but I still think getting that IE is going to be the move. And then Rapid Fire can be okay. It does give you that extra range. The attack speed doesn't scale particularly well with him, but getting that little bit of extra range, especially when you've got your 4th shot up, if you've got 4th shot plus Rapid Fire, obviously that's going to be really strong. So several good itemization options. Again, good wave clear, good scaling. Does a lot of upfront burst damage with his attacks and his abilities late game. Gets the movement speed so that he can kite out divers, especially because he's able to take Boots of Swiftness, because attack speed boots, again, or attack speed in general is not a super effective stat on him. So just having these boots with that extra movement speed is going to be pretty handy. Then we have Kaisa, and this might seem a little strange, but I still, I wouldn't argue if someone wanted to put her in tier 2, but I still think that she's just so versatile and she can be really strong, and there are a lot of different builds that you can do on her. I think a lot of people are still doing Kraken early on. She's got pretty good wave clear. One of her big problems is that she is short range early, so she can be bullied if people are taking advantage of, max range auto attacks and things like that, which in most elos they're not going to do that. They're going to be playing closer, or they're not going to hit you with autos while you're trying to hit them, at gold and lower, probably even platinum and lower. They're not going to pressure you that much early. So her short range early on can be a problem, but most people are not going to punish you in most elo brackets for it. And then again, I really don't like Phantom Dancer. I know a lot of people like this item on her. If you're having to chew through Sejuani's and tanks, like that, and you need a bunch of attack speed, I guess that's fine. but I would much rather go with something like a Quick Blades. Again, this is just going to allow you to move around a lot more, kind of like with Zeri. Your uptime on your E is going to be just, it's up a lot more, especially once you get it evolved and you can go invisible with it. It's incredibly oppressive in team fights to, you know, every 2 or 3 seconds or something, be able to go invisible and like dash around. Get the extra attack speed, all of that stuff can be strong. Although I will point out that Olo Infinity Edge is still going to be the strongest tier 3 item, closely followed by the Collector, or tier 2 item, I should say, followed by the Collector. Now you do have to pick between Infinity Edge and Navori. Navori, again, is going to be for mobility, for repositioning in team fights, longer fights, and you're going to want the Infinity Edge if you just have to break through tanks. You just want the maximum possible burst damage early on. That's good. Now with Xayah, it is a little weird because a lot of your damage is going to come from your missiles, from your Q, and sometimes from your W. So in other words, stuff that can't crit. So having that extra crit bonus in some of those situations where you're like diving the back line and using missiles and stuff, more so than a bunch of autos, Navori might be better for that, just because it is going to give you more chances to move around, and it's going to give you more missiles if you're going to be, you know, spamming your missiles a lot. So I'm not sure exactly which one is better. They're pretty close win rate wise. It's just probably going to depend on the situation. All right, and then we just have a few more minutes. I got to get out of here. I do have to make these a little quicker, but I wanted to spend most of the time on what I consider to be the top ones. Okay, so Ezreal, I could definitely see an argument for him being S tier. His win rate in Pro is not fantastic. In solo queue, it's okay. But the new build with the Essence Reaver into Quick Blades, into Dust Blade, is extremely powerful. One of the big problems with Ezreal historically is it just takes you so much time to come online, and you don't have a lot of damage early. So if you're having to get tier, and then you're, you know, like tier Sheen, and you're, you know, working your way up to Trinity Force, it's really the tier. Just takes away a lot of his punch early on. But if you just skip the tier and you just go Essence Reaver now, that's going to give you a lot more AD, a lot more burst up front. You'll still get some of the mana regen off of Essence Reaver when you're hitting people with it. And you're still going to get the Sheen proc off of Essence Reaver, but you also get crit on that, which your Qs don't crit, but if you do auto attack, you know, that is going to obviously be able to crit. And then that opens up the Navori Quick Blades, where in particular that's going to give you a lot of mobility, just like with the other champs that want that item. You know, you're landing your Qs, it's going to be lowering the cooldown of your abilities by like 2 seconds or something every time you land your Q, and so your E is going to be up every 3 or 4 seconds, so you're constantly going to be able to blink around, spam your Qs, you know, just spam everything that you have. So just like most other people, anyone that has a lot of abilities that do damage and you want lower cooldowns, Essence Reaver or Navori Quick Blades is going to be your ticket there. So I like that. And then just getting Dust Blade just so you have more upfront burst, and you're doing a lot of damage with the lethality from the Dust Blade. You're not landing a ton of autos for Kraken. You can go Shield Bow, but it's kind of a low damage item. So that's why I think people do Dust Blade. It's a bit weird. There might be some other items that could be okay situationally, but it's really just your abilities do more damage because of the lethality that you get on that item. That's like the max lethality item. I guess you could do Prowler's Claw if you wanted to, but you get a little bit more burst off of that. Okay, and then Caitlyn might be one of the more controversial ones that I have on here. She is very, very good in Pro. So if this was Pro, Caitlyn obviously would be high S, like probably number 1 in Pro. But in most Elo brackets, people are just not going to leverage her ability, like her range early on, to auto attack people, and they're definitely not going to chain her abilities together. And that's the biggest problem that I see with Caitlyn, is people just don't use the traps well. You have to get those traps down, and you have to use the geometry of the traps to be oppressive, to push people off of the wave, to stop them from CSing under tower, just to be a real pest and just make their life, you know, a living nightmare with Caitlyn and the early pressure. You have to be relentless, because if you don't do that, if you sit there and just farm and go even, she's a lot worse on 2 items than most of these other champions, right? Like, she can get Infinity Edge second, but none of her abilities crit. I guess her headshot can crit, but a lot of her other abilities don't crit. They have longer cooldowns, and she just has to auto attack to do most of her damage, and her attack speed is slow. So she's really designed to constantly do poke damage with her autos. Now, late game, if you get to like 3 or 4 item Caitlyn, where she is attacking quickly and she's like, you know, doing 1,000 damage plus with a headshot, then yes, she's very strong. But historically, that's been her big weakness, is on second item and sometimes even the third item. She's just not going to be as strong as many of these other champs. So, anyways, she's okay. Super oppressive in pro, but I think in Platinum Minus, it's just too hard for people. They just don't leverage her major advantages in the early game as much as they need to get ahead. Yes, I have seen Caitlyn's do it. Yes, it is very oppressive. Yes, she is annoying. So, you know, I could see it in S, but I just think that a lot of people just don't play her. And I know, like, well enough. And I know that seems weird. It's like, well, Xayah is high skill cap, so is Zeri. What about Caitlyn? A lot of people just don't realize Caitlyn's high skill cap. Like, they don't know what they need to do. Like, with Xayah, you know you need to get the angle on the feathers. With Zeri, you know you need to be able to hit your Qs and position well in team fights. With Caitlyn, people just don't know what they don't know. Like, they don't know what's possible with her. They don't know just how important those traps are. So they don't get better at it because they don't know what they need to work on a lot of times. So I think that's the real thing about Caitlyn, is she's like low-key hidden, really hard to play correctly. And so then people just don't learn and they don't optimize her at most elo brackets. And then Samira, she did get a bit of a nerf to the lifesteal on this patch. I think she can probably switch over to Infinity Edge instead of BT second, and she can still do shield bow and be fine. I think she's still going to be incredibly powerful right now, especially if she gets ahead. She snowballs really well. And her like little spin ability is very good. I think it can absorb Xayah feathers if you time it correctly, so you can, you know, make yourself immune to that Xayah snapback. So I believe she probably has like an okay win rate against Xayah, maybe, at least for a diver. Misfortune, underrated, still a really powerful ultimate. Her sustained damage is sus. She doesn't get a ton of stuff. I mean, quick blades are okay, but you don't have that extra like dash that you can do to reposition with it. It'll lower the cooldown on your W, I guess, but she just doesn't benefit from a lot of the new itemization changes. But if you have a really strong team fight comp, I think that she can still be really strong. And then Twitch is low-key, like, almost always good in solo queue. His best item right now is Blade of the Ruined King, which did get buffed a couple of patches ago, and that's good. But he just hasn't benefited from a lot of these recent changes. He can be bullied out early, but if you do get to a team fight scenario where it's Blade of the Ruined King, Hurricane, he can still be very strong late game. I just think it takes him a little bit longer to come online than some of these other champs unless you get super, super far ahead early. But the fact that he can go invisible and he can still blow people up if he has like PTA, Blade of the Ruined King, on one item, he's still going to be really strong in a lot of situations, especially with a support that can chip in some damage. You know, like a Leona, a Blitzcrank, something like that. He's still going to be really good. But he is very vulnerable in a lot of situations. And that's pretty much it. I do want to cut this off and like not make it too long. Lucian is still really good with Nami, but otherwise he sort of falls off late game just because he's so short ranged. But if you are very skilled on him, and I think there's maybe a space to do like Essence Reaver and Avoid Quick Blades, I'm not 100%, but I could see that potentially being pretty good on him. Aphelios is being played a lot in pro, but I just think it's too difficult for us mortals, you know, in Platinum Minus to play him optimally. But if you can, he can be strong. Ashe is alright. She does have the arrow, but her damage profile is a little bit low. I think she's better as a support if you want to play Ashe, just because the main focus is the arrow, and it doesn't matter as much if you don't do a lot with autos. Jinx does scale really well, has the nice damage, but just on 2 items doesn't do quite as well as some of these other champs. If you go like Kraken, Infinity Edge, there's just not as much synergy there. Draven is very good with the Essence Reaver into Infinity Edge, but you have to get ahead early. He's pretty bad at team fights, but otherwise pretty good. Cog is still extremely strong with Lulu, maybe a couple of other enchanters, but again, doesn't itemize as well as some of these other champs. Tristana, really good. Doesn't have the same synergy with some of these other champs, but can still be strong with something like Infinity Edge second. And then this is a Neela icon. I know that's like not clear, but this whatever template didn't have Neela. I just haven't seen her a lot lately. I don't think she's going to be as good with some of the changes, but she's okay. And then most of these are just auto attack a lot champions. They just don't do super well on 1 or 2 items. They need more items. Varus is sort of an exception where if you do hit every single arrow and you go lethality, it can be strong, but I just think he's too vulnerable a lot of times. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you next time.